Here we go. All right, can you say something, Larry?
Hey, how are you? Can you hear me?
Yes. Okay, I cheated. So I'm using Jitsi, but since I can't get Jitsi to work with me and you on the same screen, even if I put tile view, I am screen capturing Jitsi and streaming using OBS. So, yes, God bless open source software. Okay, so thank you very much for taking the time to come on. I really do appreciate it. For those of you who are not familiar with Mr. Sharpe, he was the gubernatorial candidate in 2018. And I was part of the very proud and happy 1.6% that voted for you over Andrew Cuomo. Really
I'm
would
going
have
to go with 2%. I'm rounding up, so 2%.
really would have been nice if you were governor in 2020 instead of Mr. Cuomo, but such is life. So, what do you have on your mind today, sir?
I think the biggest issue that I really want to bring up is, New York City life. You left it, which I'm jealous of you leaving it, but you left it, right? But you still feel the pain. You know what it's like. And with all the things happening, I think people don't get it. They don't understand how challenging living in New York City can be. It's very, very challenging. And people think it's not, but it really is. And that's what I'm going to bring up, right? The idea, you brought it up. You brought up the idea that, and now we're talking about the gentleman Neely who was killed recently, right?
Yeah, that's very unfortunate.
And yes, and you brought up the idea that we all in New York accept that. Like we almost know what's going to happen, right? We know that someone's going to get in front of us, someone's going to bother us, someone's going to get us. And I think that's true. And so if you live in New York City, you kind of expect to be bullied, if that makes any sense. You kind of expect it. And it's not a good feeling to feel bullied like that. It just isn't. And I think people can, if they don't live in New York City, don't understand that. Am I making sense when I say that? They just don't understand what we go through.
Yeah, like one of the things that I said that I think surprised a lot of people in that video is that there's like what most people outside of New York City don't understand when they watch this is that what I was explaining that a lot of the crazy people that you meet are kind of like mimes. Like I didn't realize this when I was 13 when I first took the bus and the train. And like I was freaked out by this because it was a guy that was just screaming at the top of his lungs, all this nasty, horrible crap. He was a full-grown adult. I was, like 13 years old. I was barely like 90 pounds yet. And my friend just is like smirking and he says, "Move 6 inches to the right in this angle." And I did. And the guy just kept screaming. And that's when I realized you're not screaming at me. You're screaming at whatever's in your imagination. And like I took it personally because I thought you were actually mad at me. You were saying these vile things towards me. And once I got off the bus, I saw, like, as the bus was going away, the person was still screaming at somebody who is pretty much, like, not even there. And, like, a lot of people outside of New York City really don't understand that part of it. So I just thought I would inject that I'm not saying it's good that this is normal. I'm not saying I like that this is normal. But sadly, after, again, over 20 years of taking the subway, the train, Staten Island Railroad, Long Island Railroad, all that is actually very normal. Like, and it shouldn't be, but it is.
Yeah. The thing that drives me crazy is say that you are a regular human being and you're just trying your best, right, to live your life. And then you realize that you really can't. And you can't because you're human. And I hate to say it that way, but you're human. What does that mean? You showed a couple, and the couple was being harassed by a gentleman in your video. And the gentleman is harassing a couple with a child. You're a young man. You have your wife there or your girlfriend there. You have your child there who's small, a 6 or 7-year-old child. And some guy is cursing, swearing, and stepping to you. If you're not living in New York City, what do you think?
Something bad is immediately about to happen to you. This man wants to end you.
Yes. And when that happens, what are you going to do? You're going to do something.
You're going to respond in kind. And like the weird thing about New York City is that it kind of, there's something about it where you start to accept that as normal. Like that couple, they were not fighting back. They were not saying anything back. They're just like, look down, just ignore it. And it's like, I mean, at some point, you know, like my point is people eventually decide, I don't want to deal with this. I don't want to live like this. Or like something just kind of snaps in them. Like I dealt with that for 20 years. Honestly, I didn't get a lot of yelling, people yelling. It only happened like 3 or 4 times. Somebody was genuinely yelling at me in the subway. And when that would happen, sometimes I would just kind of smirk and laugh. But like at some point that kind of gets tiring. And I didn't really realize the effect it has on people or how not normal it was until I would meet people that were visiting.
That's the part I want to touch if I could, right?
Yeah.
All right. So let's say, for example, you're that couple. You do nothing as the man. You go home. You're telling me that wife doesn't go, why didn't you say something? What are you doing? Why didn't you say something? That man was going to get our daughter. Your daughter doesn't look at you and go, Daddy, why didn't you protect us? That doesn't happen. Of course you feel that. Of course you feel that. It doesn't mean you should act. I'm not saying you should act, but I get how someone could feel that way. So now the next time it happens, how do you feel? You feel like you have to do something. Now I know because I've been that guy who's done something. And when you do something, here's the part that shocks you and will shock people who live in New York City. When you do something to try to defend somebody or to stop things, they attack you. So, and you know, people think I'm crazy, but you're nodding your head because you know it's true. If that man had said, hey, dude, what's wrong with you? Get away from my family, and stood up, he's a white guy off the bat. The other guy was black. Everyone in that subway would have been like, sit down. He's having an issue. What are you doing? You're a racist. That would have actually happened. And this is the part people don't get. And all I'm saying is, it isn't so, and I'm using this on purpose, black and white. We don't know what the people on that subway have been through. We don't know what happened if one of those people on the subway had seen somebody beaten before, had seen somebody hurt before, and they thought, oh my God, this guy's going to do something, and he wanted to react. My point on this is, and again, tell me if I'm wrong here, Lou, most of the time people, to your point, do nothing. In this case, the Marine grabs the guy. When he grabs him, the two people don't pull him off of the guy. They don't sit back and do nothing. They assist him in actually keeping him down. That's the part that made me rethink this. Maybe he did something. Maybe he came at somebody. Again, I don't know. But my biggest issue of this entire thing is we've made a decision on this without knowing any of these things.
Well,
we said it's a lynching. Well, it's not a lynching.
The person
we
who
said, oh my God, it's racist. It's not that. It might be anything, but it's not that.
I mean, the person who made the biggest decision on this without saying anything, I believe, is the person who, unfortunately, at this point in time is your governor. And I say that with a small smirk because she's not mine. When this first happened, she said, I think she said something along the lines of, and please do correct me, it was something along the lines of, well, you know, the subway's a tough place and actions have consequences, sounding like she was not having sympathy for the guy, like, you know, the Marines did a good thing. And then she realized, and then I think at that point she realized the state that she lives in is like, oh my God, did I just say, oh, whoops, that's not what my side's supposed to say, and immediately backtracked and said something like, you know, this man died for the crime of riding the subway. And it's like, for both of these things, both statements I'm confident she made without ever actually looking at the video, without having any idea what went on or any of the history of it. And she kind of, it's like kind of the way that it's almost very similar to the way in which she became governor by not, you know, doing anything. She kind of made this statement without looking into anything. And it's like, you have no thoughts of your own. You have no coherent ideology of your own. You're just this weird puppet that says things that you're told you're supposed to say. And that was very disappointing.
It wasn't disappointing to me at all. At all. Not even in the least bit. And I said, because that's what she does. Right? That is what she does. Every single time. She is someone who literally, just says, what is going to get me elected? What's going to keep me happy? And she does it. That's what she does. So initially she said, okay, I think some guy did something bad. So let's get behind the people who are scared on the subway. Then she went, oh, wait a minute, that doesn't seem good. So let me now decide that the guy died because he rode the subway. And again, my point is, no one's solving the problem of the people on the subway, ever. We have accepted as true, and we don't solve it. When I ran in 2018, I gave plans to fix it. When I ran in 2022, I gave plans to fix it. And here's the worst part, Lou. My plans are on my website. You can just take them.
Can you explain your plan?
Lie.
Can you explain?
I'll give you.
To people who are too lazy to go to your website, explain your plan.
Let me give you one that I came up with last year because of the problems that we did. What no one wants to accept is everything got worse because of the lockdowns. That made everything worse. And no one will say this is a self-inflicted wound. People in New York City have always had issues with addiction and always with homelessness. We've had those issues, mental illness. It's been true literally for decades. Of course. But when you lock down people for 2 years, when you scold people for 2 years, when you isolate people for 2 years, if you didn't have an addiction problem, but you had a mental illness problem, now you got both. If you didn't have a mental illness problem, but an addiction problem, now you got both. And you couldn't go to your healthcare workers, you couldn't get your medicine, you couldn't go back to your family, so you were double screwed. When did all this crime explode? 2020. What happened in 2020? Lockdowns. Literally, the lockdowns happened, all the crime exploded. They're directly related without question. That's number one. So I said, how do we fix this? By the way, I warned everyone of this back in 2020. I got the receipts in March. I told people it was going to happen. The black market exploded. Gang violence exploded. You told young men you can't go to school, you can't go to work. And by the way, you also can't buy stuff. So that's the black market. You basically created an army for the gangbangers. You recruited for the gangbangers and they said, thank you for the army. And they used it and they're fighting each other. Gang violence in the streets. Why are you shooting people in the middle of the street? Well, I'll tell you why. That's how you enforce your contracts when you're in the black market. You need to know that Bad Pablo is not going to be able to mess with Bad Jerome because Bad Jerome is going to shoot Bad Pablo's people right in the face. That's going to happen in daylight. So enforce my contracts. I can't use cops in courts. I will use street justice. That's what happens constantly. That's why this happened in the first place. So I accept that as true. Undo the lockdowns in every way, shape, or form. Get people back to work, get people back to school, and they don't have time to go out and shoot people and do this kind of stuff. Number two, now that I know that people who have trouble are going to congregate in places like the subways and bus stations, because that's what people do. I get that. Now, the problem is right now, do we have homes and facilities? And yeah, we do. But there is such a bureaucracy to use them that unless you're a working poor family, and the idea of homeless people all being crazy addicts is not true. Homeless people are not in any way, shape, or form a monolith. There are people who are crazy. That's true. People who have addiction problems. Accurate. And there's also working poor.
Yeah, something like 25% of homeless people have a job. It's just that's not the visible. Like you don't see the people that are, trying to sneak away to live in the stock room, sleeping out of their car, stuff like that. A lot of homeless people are actually gainfully employed. Not 100%. Obviously not gainfully enough, but somewhat employed.
If you remember the movie, The Pursuit of Happiness with the slapper Will Smith, if you remember him, right?
Yeah.
That movie shows how he and his son were able to kind of navigate the system and get in and get out of the system. If you are working poor with two parents, and some of them are, generally speaking, you can navigate because there's rules, regulations, there's forms you got to fill out. And if you happen to be working poor with two parents, you generally speaking in New York City, this doesn't count outside the city. In New York City, generally speaking, you can navigate it. But if you have an addiction problem, you can't navigate this. There's a curfew. They won't take drugs into the facility. Why would you go in a facility where there's a curfew and you can't get your drugs? You're an addict. Duh. Right? You can't do that. If you're mentally ill, you can't handle the forms. You physically can't manage the system. So why would I make that system? Because it's government bureaucracy. My answer was very simple. I called the carrying caboose. The last car of every other subway train is literally a carrying caboose, the last car. It's a car that is sponsored not by the government, because that will only make it bad. It is sponsored by one of two things. Pharmaceutical companies who are going to need the drugs anyway. So they got money, they can do it. It's their fault, let them do it. Or any other company that wants to make its image better. So some company wants to make its image better because they did an oil spill in the Gulf or something. Awesome. Sponsor one of these things. Awesome. And you're good. Do that instead, right? Instead of doing some commercial where you tell people how sorry you are, don't do that. Sponsor one of these cars. Now they start sponsoring these cars. And the back of that car is security that is not cops, because many people who are addicts or who are mentally ill are afraid of cops. So you don't make it cops. It's private security. And in the back, of course, you give it Wi-Fi, and then there are people there to help them and go, oh, Johnny, thank you for coming in. Man, you look like you're in a bad shape. How you been? You in trouble? Have a seat. Go into your system. Dude, let me get you a house. And then they fill out the paperwork. They get them back in the system. They get them back to help. Have you had your meds? You have it. What's wrong? Where'd you have it? Okay. Have you eaten? Have a seat. Go over there and have something to eat. That's there for them. You literally bring it to them. What does that mean? If there's a cop now who comes in, instead of hitting some homeless guy over the head, he just brings it to the back of the bus. Go to the back of the train, done. No one has to get arrested. No one's going to get hit over the head. No violence.
Just so I can help understand this. So I remember the G train had 4 cars because the G is the worst train in the country, and every other train has 8 cars. So are you saying that the last car would not be available to normal passengers, or that there would be a 9th car added to your average train?
Doesn't matter. You pick. I don't care. Yes, yes, and yes. I don't care. Sure.
Okay,
now, if you're saying, well, wait a minute, Larry, there's going to be less trains. So what? The right now, it's not crowded in the subways. We're at maybe 50% of what we've been. So I don't care about losing a car. Who cares? And if you've seen some of these cars, when you've got homeless people in a car, you lose half the car because they smell so bad. Nobody wants to be in the seats. And it sounds horrible, but that's real.
It's true. You can always tell a tourist because a tourist is like, oh my God, look, there's an empty car in the L train at the Lorimer stop. Yes. But it's like, oh, that's so adorable. And then you walk into, and then they walk in and they look like they're about to die because of the smell. Correct. And then they can't run out because the door closes. Yes. And they don't know that they can go between the cars, so they just stay there. It's
scared to go between the cars.
Okay, so just rewinding just a little bit. So one of the things that drove me the craziest in 2020 was when the entire talk of lockdowns occurred. Is anytime anybody was against this for any reason, it was because you wanted old people to die. And there were people like me that said COVID is 100% real. It is a real serious illness that we should take seriously. And simultaneously, there are going to be tens of thousands of unintended consequences to forcing people to stay inside, to close their businesses and destroy their lives, that is going to resonate for like the next 15 to 50 years. And the people that said that were not taken seriously. We were essentially, put into this little bucket alongside all the people that said that COVID was invented by 5G and all this other crazy shit, or you just want people to die. And it genuinely bothers me that, like, as you see all this unfold in every state of the country, as you see that there are people running, like there was a dude in Austin just a week or two ago that was like running people over on the sidewalk. This happened again yesterday. All these random shootings. There's so much shit that's been going on over the past 2 years, and like so much of this little societal breakdown. You see all the existing cracks that we already had. Just kind of the fault line just kind of doubled, and since COVID. What would you have done differently?
Self-inflicted.
Okay, yes, let's say you were the governor. Like, what would you have done differently in 2020 and why?
Yep. I will tell you now, and for those of you who want details, literally go to my YouTube page, LarrySharpe.com. Go there. There is literally a separate playlist of 6 videos that I did in March of 2020. So 3 years ago, I said exactly what we should do for COVID. And by the way, I was right. I have receipts. If those of you who want details, head on over there, check it out. I put everything up there. I wasn't 100% correct because I didn't know everything, but in general, I was correct. I'll tell you what you do. You stop thinking the government knows everything. That's number one. Use the government for what we as Americans can accept it as best, which is a repository for information. So what I would have done as governor immediately is said, okay, here is what the CDC and the medical professionals tell me is the right thing to do. And that's listed on the website. And here is what other people say. And here is what other people say. 2 or 3 issues of here's what people say. And that happened, by the way. There's a thing called the Well Safety Health Zone or something like that. It's a private company that put together what they think is the right thing to keep yourself safe. Awesome. And those people who were the Great Barrington Declaration, those guys, they had one too. So put all 3 up and then allow this very simple. If, this is the government says this, if you choose to follow our guidelines, I send my inspectors out. If you follow the guidelines that New York State believes is correct, I will give you a stamp on your business. If you don't, I will not give you a stamp on your business. That's it. I don't shut your business down. I don't close things out. I give the community opportunity, individual opportunity to follow the rules and guidelines that they say. The only problem is you may not lie. If you put a stamp on your facility and I did not give you the authority to put a stamp on it, that's fraud. You are lying to your consumers. You get punished for that. But if you say, Larry, I don't believe in any of your stuff, I'm just keeping my shop open. Okay, you just don't get a stamp. Now, the people will either trust you or they won't. If they don't go into your store. You better get a stamp. If they do trust you, then they'll go into your store. Up to you. But not only my stamp, 2 or 3 other stamps they want to. But more importantly, if I'm saying I don't know, here's what they tell me. If science changes, I don't have to stand behind this thing and fight to the death because I'm not forcing you to do anything. I just go, hey, new stuff came out. I've changed. It's okay. But they didn't. They said, I'm right. Everybody's wrong. I'm going to use force of government to punish you. I'm going to make sure that you are screwed. And so now if I'm wrong, I've committed a harm. I can't admit that I'm wrong because I can't admit that I've committed harm. So I've got to double down on my silliness. I've got to double down on me being wrong. I can't change once I use force of government because now I've admitted wrongdoing. Instead, I just go, here's what I believe. If you want to follow me, go ahead. What would have happened? Within 3 months, I guarantee this, we would have figured out what's the right thing. We would have known what's working, what's not, who's dying, who's not, who's being affected, who's not. We would have a whole lot less damage over time than we had this time. Why? We'd have figured out that kids aren't affected by this thing. They just aren't. They're not affected by this thing, right? People say, oh, it's infecting the kids. Okay, yes, I guess, but it's not killing them. Literally. And please, anyone want to check me out? I'm happy to be wrong on this. Not one healthy kid died of COVID. The only kids who died of COVID were those who were already ill in some way, shape, or form. Those who already had comorbidities. Not one. Zero. The kill zone for COVID is over 65 with 2 pre-existing conditions. That it's the plague if you're there. That is a serious disease if you're in that world, right? You are really in trouble if you're in that world. Well, if you're in that world, let people know that. And you can decide if you want to get a vaccine, to not get a vaccine, to do whatever, stay in your house if you want to, wear a mask, all the things, do whatever you feel is appropriate. If we'd have done that, things would have changed. But something else, what we should have done is now engage the community. And every time that we have a crisis, we never engage the community. It's an opportunity to engage the community. Government will never do that because the government can't be the hero. What does that mean? The first thing I do is I tell people in any type of a community center, whether that's an American Legion or whether that is a Knights of Columbus or whatever it might be, hey, I know that there are rules against people sleeping in your common rooms. We're going to get rid of those rules. If you want to have people sleep in your common rooms, they may. Why? Because now I have 2 options. One, if I'm in a community to where a lot of elderly people are at home, do I want to bring my elderly people to sleep in the community centers and then have nurses and doctors there? Or do I want to make it available for other people who have their family at home, and keep their family home and they want to still work, but they don't go back home because they might give them COVID. So they will stay at the community center if they want to, and the community center can do that. Because say, hey, old workers, come to our community center. Don't go home to grandma, grandpa. We don't want them getting COVID. You stay here with us and go to work. You could have kept the entire country open doing that. You're now separating the elderly who were really in trouble from the young. Why wouldn't you do that? But teachers might get sick. If you're an elderly teacher, stay home. And you're worried. If you're a young teacher, why are you scared? Go to work. What's wrong with you? You're a young teacher? Go to work. Go to work. Take care of your kids like you're supposed to. If you're elderly teacher, stay home. And you could have easily some kind of remote for the older teachers. Older teachers have remote. Younger teachers don't. Done. Make it an option for teachers. You can stay home and do the remote or whatever. Who cares? You could have found answers for this. But they wouldn't. And the reason is they used government instead of using local communities. Not just that. New York State literally had prisoners create hand sanitizer. We use slave labor to create hand sanitizer. I'm not joking. That literally happened in New York State.
I'm sure there was no spit in any of it.
I'm sure there was not one bit. But in any case, but why would you instead say, you know what? We are going to, during this crisis, remove and end any distillery laws so that people can make hand sanitizer themselves. In fact, if you make hand sanitizer in a nonprofit, whatever that might be, local church, again, American Legion, no, do not bother applying for sales tax. Just sell it any way you want, no sales tax. So you avoid sales tax for 2 years on those issues, on masks and on hand sanitizer. Why? We realized something. Neither of those 2 things worked at all for COVID. Nothing. It didn't. It just wasted resources. However, if some local people come to a local group and all of a sudden now community begins to help each other, totally worth it. Totally worth it. To get people back into their communities, caring about each other, handing out masks to each other, making cool Yankees masks if you're in New York, or maybe Mets mask if you're in Queens, something awesome. That would have been amazing. Totally worth it. And then people would realize, oh, this doesn't work. They'd have stopped. And we wouldn't have to keep fighting this. We'd have people now, which you saw in New York, I'm sure, a 20-something-year-old woman who's running. She's thin in great shape. She's 20 years old, by herself in the park running with a mask on. That wouldn't have happened. We realized that's pretty dumb. Don't do that. We would have realized this stuff without having to tell people. They would have figured it out.
There was one woman in Rhode Island that I did a video on 2 years ago where she was running through, she was running on a sidewalk and there was nobody there and there was a police siren and the police siren was for her because she was running with a mask on. Like that type of stuff was just the kind of overkill.
Yes, that would have gone away.
Going back
Yes,
to what
I mean-
happened in the subway, you have a lot of people
I'm sorry,
that
go ahead.
so you have a lot of these. How do I put this? So I mean, we could look back on like what New York was like for the past 10 or 15 years, the
Yep.
lack of help for the homeless, the lack of help for mentally
Yep.
ill, the lack of ability to like. There was a real question that when it comes to civil liberties, especially with you being a libertarian, how would you deal with somebody that does not consent to any sort of mental health service? Because there's a bunch of issues with the mental health services and homeless services in New York as it is, especially with the ex-Cuomo nonprofit that runs the homeless shelters that we could go on about for hours. But what that comes down to is if somebody is genuinely mentally ill, but they do not accept or acknowledge that they have a problem, how do you deal with that, particularly as somebody who leans more libertarian? Because I imagine that people that our viewpoint on the world take civil liberties very seriously.
Of course, you have to give someone a serious option before you in any way, shape, or form decide to take away their civil liberties. You just have to, right? And we don't do that. This is why people are upset. They're saying, well, wait a minute. There's no option. So your option is beat them over the head and put them into a facility or let them stay outside and hurt themselves. What happened to the middle ground, right? I wish there was a simple answer, and at my carrying caboose was the magic pill. It's not. My carrying caboose is one part of a massive change in the system. The next change in the system is allowing, again, nonprofits to build specialized facilities. These facilities must be very specialized, and they have some of these in the Bronx already. Then keep doing it. For example, a facility that's just for single moms, just for male addicts, just for people with schizophrenia, just for veterans who can't get themselves back into the civilian world. And they have these already. Now, what happens? It's basically 2 or 3 floors. The first floor is some common area because people who are in that world have trouble integrating back into society. So you want to have a common area where they can come in and slowly integrate and be like, okay, I can talk to people. I can make this happen. Top floor is housing. Usually it's a very small, it's either a 1-bedroom or it is a studio. And you might go, why is it that? Because people who've been on the street get accustomed to staying in small areas. If you give them bigger homes, they just go into one small area anyway. So you want to give them a small area. You don't want to throw them out because they pop on a piss test, right? And these places don't. They don't. Because the bottom floor is help, right? The basement's help. That's if they're mothers, maybe it's a nursery. If they're veterans, maybe it is a place to get your resume squared away. Maybe it's some career training. If it's addicts, maybe it's where you get your methadone. Maybe it's how you're able to get yourself off. It's some counseling. If it's for people who have schizophrenia, maybe it's a sound proof place where they get their sensory stuff taken care of, and there's some other people that help them with that because they can't tell what's real and what's not real, right? They don't know what's a real sound and what's a real thing. They put them in those places where they can figure out what's what. They can have the conversations. All these things. What does that mean? It's nonprofit, like Ronald McDonald House, like that, right? Somebody puts their name on it. They drop a couple bucks, and the fee is, and there is a fee. There's rent. The rent is 1/3 of whatever that person makes. That's it. 1/3. That is the rent. 1/3. If you make 0, it's 0. Make $100, $33. Now, what does that mean? You don't get thrown out. But if they do the right thing and they do right by the people will begin to make more money. They'll begin to get back in action. They'll begin to start being able to support themselves over time. That might take a year, might take 10 years. Who knows when it'll take? But eventually they'll start doing it. As they do it, they get back into the system. When they're in a system, they start collecting money. They start collecting money from the government. They get Social Security. They get older, whatever. They get 1/3 of that, whatever that is. They get 1/3. At one point, if you get yourself back in action, you say to yourself, it's not worth being here for 1/3 of my income. I should leave. You self-select to leave when you want to leave. But what they found there is some people, even though it's expensive, decide to stay. Why? Because they become mentors to other people, right? They stay because they know I went through this. I can get you through this. I feel purpose in my life by getting other people through the same problem I had. It's a very common issue. You start setting this up over time, this fixes so many problems. Again, it's over time. It's taken us decades to get here. It will probably take us at least a decade to get out of it. But we're at least getting to the right world. We're nowhere near fixing any of these problems. What we are is acceptance. And the problem with acceptance is twofold. One, people like you will just leave. That's terrible. Two, people like that Marine will think, I'm tired of this. And he will do something. And when he does something, bad stuff's going to happen. We see it already.
But
So we have
I guess
people
I understand
leaving and bad things happening.
I understand the idea of having a welcoming space and, you know, not kicking them out for being addicts, because the people that tend to be on the street, like on average, are probably going to be people that fail a piss test. That all that makes sense to me. But my main question is, in the thing that I brought up in that video, I said, you know, raise your hand if you know somebody that has a problem, and raise your hand if you know somebody who refuses to admit it and will not accept your help. How would you get somebody like that help if they just said no or screw you? Because like a lot of the people, like if you lived in New York City, I don't care about offending any of my ex-neighbors because I don't live there anymore. But like if you walked up to any of these individuals and said, I would like to get you help, or I'm from, God, like the Ronald Reagan line, like I'm from New York City government and I'm here to help. I'm from this hospital, I'm here to help. I'm a therapist, I'm here to help. Whatever. They're probably going to spit in your face. Like how 100%. do you how do you draw the line between not violating their civil liberties if they really haven't done much more than a misdemeanor yet, and like remanding them because, let's face it, somebody 100%. That acts like that is screaming and cursing at the top of their lungs, like just vibrating with anger, is like, you don't want that walking around the street. Like how do you balance that?
So there's two pieces. One, if you go to my world, what I'm talking about, what will happen is the government won't be involved. So who will be talking to these people? People who've been through the system, and those people they listen to. This is a guy I was on the street with two months ago, and now he's coming back and going, Lou, I know you and I were doing what we were doing on the street for years. I'm telling you, this house over here is going to help us, man. It's helping. Just come. Look, keep your drugs. Just come. I need you. That kind of stuff he'll hear. But let's say he does it. Not everyone will. Now you got to make sure that the judges and the DAs also have access to this. So now when they are arresting people, they don't just go, oh, well, since I don't want to put you in jail, I'll let you go. Or I'm just going to put you in jail, but you're going to get worse. Because right now, our largest mental facility is our prison system. Right? That's for sure. That's our biggest mental facility, is our prison system. And the corrections officers are not trained or prepared to handle it. Neither are the people involved. So it's getting nothing but bad. So we have to give both the DAs and the judges access to this and go, you know what? I'm going to sentence you to something, and let the government force them. The person makes an error, yells at somebody, attacks somebody, whatever. And instead of going, I'm going to give you a ticket, which you're never going to pay because you don't make any money, you're never coming back. So useless ticket. Or show up at the court next month. You're never going to show up. You don't remember what the hell's going on. You're never going to show up, which happens. That's why they get arrested 44 times. All these arrests are them re-arresting because they have warrants out because they don't come back. They never show up. Of course not. They're addicts. They have mental problems. Of course they don't show up. So instead of doing that, say, here's where you're remanded. You're remanded to this place. So once you have done a crime, hurt somebody, I have no problem remanding you and forcing you to go to a place. You have committed a crime. You created a victim. When you create a victim, you can pay for your crime. No problem whatsoever. And it's to kill anybody, not required. Please don't. There was on Sam Cedar's show, The Majority Report, a woman there, I forgot her name. She's there, Emma, I think is her name. And she says, it's okay. I was hit in the face with an elbow of a guy. And she's like, okay with it. It's fine. And walked away, whatever. No, you should not get elbowed in the face by somebody. That's not okay. That is a crime. That's assault. He may be remanded. Am I clear on what I'm saying?
Yeah, there are consequences to ideologies. But how do I put this? I've probably done the same thing, like where I've let something go that I shouldn't let go because it conflicted with my own view of how the world should be. And you need somebody to like tear you aside and like smack you when you do that, and not elbow you.
My problem is it happened to me, right? I think I mentioned this on my video I did before. I was the guy when I first came back to the States after being in the Marine Corps for years, being overseas. I came back to New York City. I was the guy who said something. I was that ex-Marine. I didn't choke anybody, but I would say something. I would say, stop, don't, what are you doing? And what I found was I didn't belong because everybody would be mad at me. I was the bad guy for trying to stop the bad behavior. But the Marine in me was like, no, I'm not letting this happen. It's not okay. And they were like, no, Larry, they didn't my name, but they were basically yelling at me. What are you doing? What's wrong with you? And I stopped. And I became kind of like you in this regard. Just I let it go. And now I do. I accept that I will be bullied if I live in New York City. I will be bullied. So I have two choices: get bullied or leave the city. You chose leave the city. Some people can't afford to leave the city, though. So now they're stuck. So they're stuck. They can't afford to move. Or their job's here. Their family's here.
Yeah, like a lot of people say, why don't you move? And like, again, to be clear, moving for me is a luxury. Like, I spend probably in terms of lost business, but also like rebuying stuff, moving stuff, everything else, lost opportunities. About $50,000 altogether, and 30,000 of that was legit spent on actual trucks. Like your average, I mean, I remember when I started this business, I had $200 in the bank. I'm not. What are you talking about? Leave? I don't. There's no money for anything. You know, the entire way that I was able to have bootstrap having a business in New York City was because I was able to spend $80 a month back when that was monthly MTA fare for a Metro card that allowed me to go anywhere. So I could get from one side of the city to, if there was a client, 30 miles away, it cost me nothing to go see them. Like when you see how many times I use the subway a day, I was paying something like 50 cents a trip anytime I wanted to get anywhere. If you're broke, you don't have the luxury of being able to leave. So I recognize that me being able to get up and say, screw you guys, is really a privilege and a luxury on my part. I think it's a privilege and a luxury that I've earned for myself from working, but I recognize it's not something that everybody has. And yeah, I think that people that do leave, that they give up on the concept of it getting any better. Because, I mean,
yes. And when people outside, I mean, imagine you have a guy who comes from a place where you can open carry, to where it's normal for you to defend yourself. That's a normal thing. They don't get that when you come to New York City, and some of you your head's gonna want to explode. You don't have a right to defend yourself in the city. You don't. But Larry, Second Amendment does not exist in my city. It does not exist. It's not a thing. Please don't fool yourself. Think you're a constitutional lawyer and you're going to fix. You're not. If you come to my city with your gun, you are going to Rikers Island. I don't care what you think. That's where you're going. Don't fool yourself. That's what happens all the time. That's what keeps happening. That doesn't exist. You have to accept that or leave the city. And sadly, people keep leaving the city.
Yeah, like I accepted everything. Sadly, I accepted everything to deal with the subway. I accepted everything when it comes to self-defense. I accepted the fact that if some crackhead walks into my store and like I drag him out, God forbid that gets on camera, I'm gonna get I'm gonna get picketed. But like I left because of the other governmental rot. Like when I see, like after providing you with every single piece of paperwork that demonstrates that I do not owe you guys $600,000 to $1.2 million, you seem to keep asking for it. And like I realized at that point, like I'm done. But every single step of the way with city government, there's just some, and I've caught them saying it on tape. I call the Supreme Court, and like the woman that I get says the elevator's not going to the top up there, referring to her colleagues in the other room. And like one of the parts that really, like, honestly, how would you even deal with getting these people out of government if you were actually elected? Because like, let's say hypothetically you didn't get 2% of the vote. Let's say you got like 95% of the vote. Like,
absolutely.
how do you fix that? I mean, that's generational rot in every single department.
You are completely correct. You're completely correct. The issue here is, again, this doesn't change overnight, right? The way you do it is you have to have community step in. Here's what people who are more libertarians don't always understand. They say, just get rid of it. Get rid of government. Just get rid of it. You can't, because people rely on these things, right? There are people who are in trouble, and their only lifeline often is bad government and terrible services, and it keeps them, doesn't help them. It just keeps them alive, and they're worried about it, and they need it, and they're scared because they see another option. You have to start engaging community to support people. When you engage community to support people, you will find they'll need government less. As they need government less, they'll start to get rid of government. It will take time, but it's not tomorrow. But we're not doing it. All we're doing is throwing more money at the problem. If you look at places like New York, the growth in business is all because of government spending. And the sad part is, people who love this will say, see, it can't grow without government spending. They will look at this as a positive thing and say, see, we need government spending to do these things. No, you've stifled the private sector so much. The only way we grow is through government. Isn't that government spending is helping? Government is hurting to the point where it's the only way we grow. This is a bigger issue. If government keeps growing and that's the only way we grow, how do we build our private sector? We don't. New York State has a $230 billion budget when we've lost over $20 billion in state revenue because of people physically leaving the state in the last 2 years. You are one of them, my friend. You no longer pay New York State tax. So you're not paying for us anymore.
That's
so
a
you
real
are
smile.
One of them.
That's a real
yes,
smile
I know.
right there.
You are one of them, correct. And you are one of many.
Yeah, I would not have minded the government existing if it was competent government. And, people will often say, like, he left Texas just to not pay taxes. And it's like, I mean, Texas had no state income tax for, I think, the entirety of my life. New York and state and city were known for having higher income taxes and corporate taxes for, I think, the entire time I've been alive. And nobody's ever tapped me on the shoulder to go, hey, all the things that you say about Texas and New York have been constants for 20 years. What made you decide to go now? And that's the thing. Like, there's no self-reflection on any of this.
No. There is. Let me be very clear. Any individual thing you might mention, any one thing you might mention, is not a big deal. It is the accumulation of all the small punches that makes you go, I'm done. But one thing, if you go, well, the subway sucks, that's not enough reason. Oh, but I was assaulted in the subway. Ooh. Now my taxes are high. Well, it's not that bad. Oh, but now I can't even hire anybody because of those taxes. Oh, okay. Well, now the government comes after me physically and punishes me for growing. Oh, wait. You start adding those things up, it becomes too much. At one point you go, I'm out. I have thought that so many times. But there's a part of me that is just angry and I don't want to give up. I don't want to feel like I lost. But I think at one point I may just give up too. But I'm trying my best to stay, because here's what I do know. For those of you listening and or watching who are saying, I don't live in New York City, why do I care? This is coming to you. If you think it isn't, you are fooling yourself. Well, I got a gun. Great. The cops will take you into jail then, because you are not going to fight them. This is coming to you. If we stop it here, we stop it everywhere. I'm in the front line, and Lou used to be with me in the front line, but he fell back. He fell back to the rear. I'm still in the front line. I am still in the trenches, right? I'm still there. And if we can win here on the front line, we save the whole country.
So what would you define as winning? Or what would you define it?
I'll tell you what I don't. Getting New York to just stop the bleeding. What does that mean? New York is losing, prior to COVID, New York was losing about 100,000 people per year. Now it loses about 300,000 per year.
As a state or as a city?
As a state.
Okay,
state. Yes. The city lost over 500,000, but many did come back, but not all stayed. So during COVID, the city was deserted. Over 500,000 left the city during the lockdowns, but many did come back. But we're still losing about 300,000 every single year. In fact, for Florida, 6,000 people per month change their driver's license from New York to Florida. That's 200 a day, just Florida. So they're all leaving like there's no tomorrow, right? If we just made it to where people would stop leaving New York, that's it. That's a win. Because that would mean that New York State is now livable. It's not. Clearly it's not. People are voting with their feet. And if you go to any place you want to go in New York State, go to an event. I go all the time. I literally cross this state every year. I go to all 62 counties. And I do events all the time. Meet people in diners and gun shops and vape stores all over the place. I meet people everywhere. When I meet them, every room, there are people there going, we're leaving. We're leaving. We're leaving. And I brought this up during my video last week when literally one couple came to me. They drove to where I was at the diner, ate, sat with me, just so they can tell me, Larry, it's time to give up. You should leave. We're leaving. It's done. The state's finished. You can't fix it. We love you. You got to go. Wow, did that affect me? That affected me. This is a day that they could have gone any place else they wanted to go. They didn't have to be there with me. They showed up not to give me money or to tell me I was awesome. They showed up to say, I love you, Larry. It's over. Leave. Wow.
What were their reasons?
Did
they give you a reason, or was it just that and walk away?
They didn't have to. I understood. We have and you know this, we have a single party system in New York that is nowhere near even close to being repaired. We have a Republican Party in New York that is completely broken, has no power whatsoever. It's a goddamn joke in my state. It's a joke. If you're a Republican in my state, I'm sorry, it's true. The party's a damn joke. Well, the Libertarian Party is a joke. Yes, but we're still fighting. They have already jumped another person's team, right? They've already accepted. They're basically just a puppet state underneath the Democratic Party. We're the rebellion. We're actually still fighting. They're not anymore. They've already given up. In fact, how do I know that? You know who sued me off the ballot last year? The Republican Party. They're the ones who did it. Yes.
Sued you?
They sued me off the ballot. Correct. The Republican Party did. Not Democrats. They didn't care. Democrats were like, we're going to win this thing. It's 3-1 Democrat Republican. Kathy Hochul didn't even run a campaign last year and still beat Zeldin by 5 points. Didn't even run a campaign. I mean, literally did not run a campaign. She raised $20 million, put it in her pocket, and went on like TV once and said, Zeldin's Trump, and then walked away. That was their entire campaign. And it worked. Of course it works. It's 3-1. In New York City, it's 6-1 Democrats, Republican. And of those 300,000 people who are leaving, most of them would be voting against the governor. That's why they're leaving. So the people who are staying are just more people who will vote for the governor again.
One thing I think a lot of people don't really understand when they see this, because I'm just going through some of my chat where people are saying everybody's
Please.
gone, it's done, is like, like if you look at Miami, it's like what, 400,000 people, Nashville like 400 to 800,000 people, Austin 800,000 people, Chicago 1 or 2 million people, Houston like 2 point something million people, New York City had 8.5 million. So even if it lost 500,000, it still has quadruple the population of the most any of the other one of some of the most populous U.S. cities. So like I think the reason that they're able to get
there's two things to remember here, though. Number one, Chicago has lost over 1 million people in the past 50 years. It's lost a lot of people. Chicago used to be over 3 million. Now it's over 2. And that's only about a generation or so. So Chicago's gotten its ass kicked. New York State, though, New York City, by the way, New York City's budget is over $100 billion. You lose half of your population, this city becomes a ghost town. This city becomes worse than Detroit.
I mean, it's a question of who.
Can't afford it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a question of who is leaving. Like when you say if it's went from like 8.5 million to 8.2, even though that's a drop in the bucket, you're still 10 times larger than 99% of the largest U.S. cities already. Are those the people that are paying everything? Is
Yes,
the
they
$1 million
are. It's
question?
fact.
Because like when I look
there's
at
data, if you look at the data, it's absolutely true. The average person, there are still some people coming to New York. They are mostly immigrants, but there are people still coming to New York State. Most of the immigrants will make somewhere between $30,000 and $50,000 a year in that area. If I remember the stats right, that's about what they'll make per year, average. Most of the people leaving are making over 70. So yeah, it's absolutely true. Most people who are leaving, the average is far higher than people coming in, and more people are leaving. So one-on-one, the higher income person's leaving, and more of them are leaving. So yeah, it's bad on both points. Nothing but bad. Correct. So it is going to be a problem. But you're right. New York can withstand a lot up front because there's so much of us. But again, we're talking about a deficit of at least $60 billion. New York State's budget, to be clear on how much money we spend, Texas and Florida have more people than us. Our budget is over $100 billion more than both of them. Yes, just keep that in mind. Texas and Florida both have more people than us. If you add their budgets together, it's our budget. New York City's budget, over $1 billion, over $100 billion, just the city. New York State's budget is so high that only California and 18 countries have a higher budget.
The thing is, I would not mind the budget being high, and I would not mind paying the taxes that I paid if I felt like I was actually getting even like 1% of the services representative of it.
You're not at
like,
all.
Because people, I built a business there off of nothing. It was because of the very high population density. It was because I had a subway system that allowed me to travel when I did not have money for a vehicle or a cab or anything.
Yep.
Like that meant something to me. I would have happily been there for the rest of it. One of the things I'll tell my audience is, because I think they hear a lot of the news talking about taxes, this and that, is that I genuinely don't believe that people that once they get to a certain point in their life, they say, well, New York City has a 3.5% income tax and Austin has a 0%. So let me pick up my entire life, start over from scratch, and maybe not be successful. I'm not really sure, because they're going to save 3%. That's just like, I don't know anybody that's wealthy or even that's not wealthy that thinks this way. They go to where there's economic opportunity, stability, what they know.
Yep.
The people that are leaving it.
When they're going to make a change in their life, they do it. Like, for example, I was on Glenn Beck's show in 2018. And Glenn Beck and I actually talked about this. He's like, I wanted to do my show out of New York. I wanted to build my studio and run it out of New York. That's what he told me. I said, I know. I said, but you can't do that. He's like, how'd you know? I said, you can't. New York will not allow you to do what you want to do in New York. You cannot do it. It's far too expensive. It'll take you 3 to 4 years. The state will punish you all the way through. The city will punish you all the way through. If your people tell you 9 months, it's 3 years. He said, Larry, you're totally correct. So I went to Austin. So yeah, that's why. So when you want to change something, that's when you leave. When you go, I now want to do X. Well, that can't be done where you are now anymore, because New York State goes out of its way to crush all innovation. So you want to be innovative? You got to leave. You can't stay here and be innovative. It doesn't work anymore. Not just that, the lockdowns showed a really sped up how unimportant New York City has become for many of those same reasons. It used to be, the value of New York City was, if those of you don't know, the metro area of New York City is 16 million people. That's the metro area. It is a mecca, or has been in the past, for talent, particularly foreign talent and female talent, particularly, but all talent. But those two, oh my God. If you're looking for foreign talent, you're looking for female talent, there simply was not a better place to be than New York City Hands down, no other place better than that. So many talented people here. And also finance was here. All the money was here. I want to get a new business. I'm going to start stuff. It was all here. And if you were going to start a business that needed customers, I got a 16 million metro person place for customers, a 16 million metro person place for advertisements. Oh my God, it's so good. Everything's awesome. I got a good subway system, right? I got the whole deal. But they found out that when the COVID lockdowns happened, wait a minute, I can get talent from all over the place. I can just Zoom them in. I can Zoom, I can Jitsi, I can whatever I want, right? And get these people in. I don't have to use them anymore. I don't have to do this anymore. I don't have to have a store anymore. I can do it all online. I don't need my customers here. My customers can be anywhere. That happened. And when that happened, that was the death of New York. New York shot itself in the foot because that was going to happen no matter what. That was the future. But we squished what would have been 20 years into 2. And that's why commercial real estate, as you know, you've talked about it, is a disaster. And everybody was like, well, no, we'll just change it over to housing. Freaking almost impossible to do.
Good luck with that. Yeah, how many people are going to? How many people want an apartment without a window? How many people want an apartment without a window?
Or without a bathroom?
How many people want to share a bathroom with 8 other people? Like, offices are not made to be housing, and the amount of money that would cost to change all, even if you did want to change all that over, that's going to cost a lot of money. And who's going to put that money into a city where it takes you? Like, I remember just taking pictures of all the building permits and everything that's needed to get anything even remotely done there. But yes, your building that has the facade falling off of it is fine. It's like,
yes, correct.
Did you see that? Did you see the one in Chinatown? I forget. I think it was Mott Street, where like the woman was showing. She went, "Oh my God!" And you see the brick is falling off the building. Yes. The entire side is coming off of it.
Well, no, that's because what they'll do is they'll just make sure that they take it and they say, "Oh no, that's a special building. So no, you're gonna keep that because it's historical. So yeah, we're gonna landmark that building and we'll just keep it. It's landmarked, but it's gonna fall down, but it's landmarked, so we can't touch it." They just decide that. And by the way, in New York City, they can landmark your property without you agreeing to it, as long as the community says so. Correct. They can literally just go, "Oh, that building that you bought and you spent your money for, and we're gonna landmark it," which means you can't do anything with your property unless we agree. That happens in New York City. So also 100% true. So I guess what I'm saying is New York City shot itself in the foot. New York State shot itself in the foot. This is self-inflicted, and it's just getting worse. And if we don't change how New Yorkers feel, if we don't change the concept of what government is, there is no hope. There just isn't unless we make that change. Why I spend so much time doing this. There has to be a consequence. The problem is right now, New York State government does not respond to the people at all. How do you know that? Because there are so many problems in New York City. And why today did they literally stop the subway system? They stopped the subway system because of the death of Jordan Neely. Now, not that his death wasn't important. It was. I don't want anyone to die. Because if he has family and friends, I get it.
I'm sorry. Since I don't live there, and when you say stop the subway system and what do you mean by stop the subway system and who's they?
There were protesters in the subway system today in New York City who literally got in trains, held the doors open, and then got on the tracks so the subways would not work.
You are why I no longer live there. I'm just gonna I'll just be out. Look, I want people to hear that. Like, people who do that are the reason I do not live there. Correct. And I am happy to not live. Like, I do not want to. I don't want to be neighbors with people who do that.
Yes.
I don't want to pay taxes that in any way support infrastructure that I'm even sharing with people who do that. You are accelerating and here's the thing. Everybody who does that, you're making life harder for the plumber. Everything. You're making life harder for the day laborer. You're making life harder for the bricklayer. You're making life harder for tons of people that are responsible for helping society run. Like, somebody somewhere may have a toilet that's not flushing because of you. Somebody somewhere didn't get their prescription medication because of you. You're not changing the world. You're not making it better. You're just making it shittier for everyone involved. And above all, you're radicalizing the people that disagree with you, and you're radicalizing people that are in the middle that may have kind of understood your point into running in the exact other direction, and you don't even know it. You are creating the people who hate you. And I genuinely hope the people that were involved in any of that understand what they're doing.
They don't.
Like, that's the thing. And that's one thing with any of the shit that any of the right to repair shit I do. And to be clear, I understand right to repair is not like killing people and stuff like that. But you will never see me like block somebody into going into an Apple store. You're never going to see me like, like showing up to like a WWDC and catcalling Tim Cook. You're never going to see me like throwing, even during the riots in 2020. I'm not. There's an Apple store, on my bike ride home from my store. It kind of crossed my mind at one point. Maybe I run my e-bike through the window or something. But like, you're never going to see me doing any of that because I understand exactly what that's going to do. It's going to radicalize every single person that hates me into having more reason to. It's going to radicalize normal people into saying, fuck that guy. That's what you're doing. You're not making the world better.
Yes.
You're making it worse. But above all, you're going to get people that may have agreed with you and may have understood your points to say, screw you. I can't stand people who do that. In my opinion, they genuinely make society worse.
The worst part about all this, you just said, you're all right. But I'm actually not necessarily against someone protesting. I think protesting is fine in theory. But what are you protesting for? Literally, they're protesting to put one guy in jail. So if they get what they want from this massive protesting, one guy goes to jail. Okay, did that make anything better in the subway? Did that stop the next guy from being killed? Did that give any solace to Neely's family? No, it did nothing.
Is that going to prevent the next Jordan? Like, is that going to prevent the next time?
No.
Is that going to get the next person mental health help that they need? No. Is that going to help the homeless situation in New York? No. Is that going to? I'm really happy that we're deciding whether or not somebody goes to prison. I'm really happy that the criminal justice system runs based on whether or not people are stopping public transportation. Like, that's just great.
Yes.
I really want to. I'm confident that that's what they had in mind. The framers when they were writing the Constitution, coming up with the Bill of Rights, everything else.
Whoever protests most goes to jail.
By all means, if you want somebody to go to prison, what you should do is you should stop the train cars. That's how we're going to decide these cases. That's how we're going to decide landmark cases in the U.S.
It's Amendment 6.5. It says we shall ensure that if you protest, you go to jail. That's Amendment 6.5. It's part of the Bill of Rights. You didn't see it. Anyway, my other point being, they're doing this, and on top of it, they're just feeling right. They're just feeling righteous. This is just for them to feel righteous. This is all this protesting for Neely is not for Neely. It's for them to feel good.
It's a
I'm
picture
doing
on
stuff.
Instagram.
Look at me. That's what it really is. If you're gonna stop this train system, if you're gonna do that, at least do it because you want to have the carrying caboose, and you're gonna create the carrying caboose. Do it because you want to make sure that you have more housing for people or something. Do it for a reason, at least. That if you want to give me if you want me to believe that it's worth something, you got to give me a real reason. Otherwise, all you're doing is being self-righteous. You're being mean and cruel to hurt people who you don't mean to hurt, so that some guy can go to jail, so nothing can work. But to your point too, this is a harsher part that people don't really get, and I wish they would, Lou. You've hit a real part that I talk about all the time. The greatest and absolute most violent predator in all of humanity, without question, is the charismatic male sociopath. That person destroys and kills more people, more lives than anything else. Nothing else. You might think the mosquito. The mosquito is pretty tough. The mosquito kills about 1 million people per year. That's a big deal. Sociopath, male charismatic sociopath, kills far more and ruins lives. That's what it does. So when you do what you just said, when you get people all riled up to hate one side, that sociopathic, charismatic male goes, aha, thank you for giving me an army that I can now use to create even more havoc. And they do all the time. They use that army. So now nothing can solve because I hate the other. And what you see right now, and this is the part that this is perfect for this, in our current political world, we don't want a win for us is not my life getting better. A win for me is I hurt the other. So if I'm a lefty, I got to beat the Trumpster. If I'm a righty, I got to own the lib, right? I got to do that and then I win. Okay, great. Did your life get better? Well, no. Is anything about your life better? No. Well, then how'd you win? Well, the other guy got hurt. Yeah, but then next election, you get hurt. And then after that, they get hurt. And you know who's actually winning? Not you. The people at the top who keep running. They keep winning. They keep getting more money and more popular and get more tweets and all the cool stuff they get. They still get rich as they can possibly be. Meanwhile, you're sitting in the subway protesting, and when you're going to go home, you can't afford to pay your bills. But you protested on the subway, but you can't afford to get in stuff. You had to jump over and skip the fare because you couldn't afford a Metro card. But you're worried about whether some guy goes to jail or not? What's wrong with you? That's what's happening in New York. You got people who literally can't afford to go on the subway, skip the fare to jump on the subway tracks so some guy goes to jail so they can feel righteous. I don't want to feel righteous. I want to pay my bills. That's what I want. And people just are not doing it. They don't get it. And more people are doing it. And you see it on both sides. I know people on the right think they're correct, people on the left think they're correct. If your only goal is to hurt the other and you fall into that, well, we got to stop these people. You are also part of the political problem because you just vote against the other and not for anything. And that's critical.
I couldn't have said it better myself. Okay, so now one of the questions that I would have for you is even outside of New York City, over the past 3 years, every single problem seems to have gotten radically worse. If people like every single tension between people, whether it's men and women in dating, like you look at a Kevin Samuels video comment section, you look at Reddit r/2x chromosomes, like all that's just ratcheted up. And what I said about even like, you know, the people that ride the subway versus the homeless and mentally ill, like 5 years ago, the interaction would have ended with, hey, anybody got some food? Hey, screw you. And the guy would have said F off, and then they would have went their separate ways rather than I'm ready to die. And then then you know you have a Marine that like chokes the guy to death. Like, how do you actually fix any of this? And like, because a lot of what we're talking about here, it really kind of has already arrived in some way, shape, or form in the rest of the country. I mean, maybe it's just that it's reported on more often, but the more I look at Bloomberg front page news, the more I look at Reddit front page news, it just seems like everybody is at each other's throats all the time, and government is simply a reflection of that, of the fact that we are at each other's throats more of the time and that things are getting worse. How do you turn that back?
I'm going to say something that's going to sound silly, but it absolutely is true. The way is leading with empathy. Now, I know that sounds silly. It sounds like I'm Marianne Williamson or something, but there's a reason why she's popular, because she does lead with empathy. In fact, so did Bernie Sanders for a while. I mean, now he's sold out, but he used to lead with empathy also. So when you lead with empathy, you set the tone of empathy. I don't mean sympathy. There's a big difference. Sympathy is I feel sorry for somebody, right? That's not what I'm talking about. Empathy. I can kind of understand why someone thinks that way. We don't do that. Our leaders don't, right? AOC, who was my congressperson, didn't come out and go, you know what? I've been in the subways. I understand, you know, how people could feel about this. I get it. Let's not jump to conclusions. Let's have a conversation. Let's see what happened here. And if everybody was doing that, it would begin to change, because now the guy yelling, get him, would feel like the oddball. He doesn't feel like the oddball at all. He feels like the norm because every leader is right on top of him doing the same thing. Yeah. Again, they went to this guy deserved it was number one. And the other one was, well, he was lynched. This came from our leaders. Literally, Congress people and city councilmen said he was lynched. Do you know how insulting that is to a black person that he was lynched? People who in their family have been lynched. That's Malcolm X's dad was lynched. That's a lynching. This is not a lynching. This is like everything. I guess if you're Jewish, I don't know if anyone watching is Jewish, and everything's the Holocaust. You know, everything's not the Holocaust. The Holocaust is the Holocaust. Lynching is lynching. They're different. They're not the same. And every time you do that, you just lessen the other thing. It's a bad idea. We should do it. And our leaders do it. Well, the other thing is the other thing we do. The second the guy gets in trouble, we look in his background to find why he deserved it. Now, I don't know Neely. And maybe he did. Maybe he was a bad guy and deserved it. I have no idea. But the point is, those people there didn't know that. If you were to tell me that that Marine knew Neely had tried to kill his sister or something, then maybe I could understand that, right? Maybe I could.
I think the obsession with that.
They didn't know. They had no idea.
I think the obsession with what the person had done in the past, or all of this, I think a lot of that stems from the whole, like a lot of the times when this type of stuff gets reported on, it gets reported on with people saying, you know, he was a subway dancer and musician that just touched everybody's lives and made them all happier. And I can't understand, like, I can't bring myself to understand why anything like this could ever possibly happen. Like, it can't just be like, you can't just report the story. So then the other side then overcompensates to the other end by saying, okay, no, fine, we're going to paint this person as the biggest piece of crap possible, in response to a lot of media outlets, you know, saying like, kind Michael Jackson impersonator that just wanted to moonwalk was killed by evil racist Marine. And it's like,
absolutely,
like so then you wind up with the pendulum swing to the other direction, which is, you know, this person deserved to die. Fuck him. We're better off without him. And like, neither of those are really, each side like projects their ideology onto everything that occurs. And my point is,
we do this before we even know. Like, we don't even know. We just decide that this guy's bad. or decide this guy's good, right? We decided because of this, again, this is a left-right paradigm, right? What makes it good? By the way, 3 people held him down. One of them was black. We don't hear that. It's white guy killed black guy. That's it. Well, what are the 2 guys who helped him?
Yeah, it's you can't say it's one hero or one criminal. It's either
Correct.
one hero with 2, sidekick heroes, or one criminal with 2 accomplices. It's not
correct.
Like, you can't see a lot of the blame is being placed on one person there.
But that story doesn't really land well, so we're going to ignore those parts. We're going to forget about that. We're just going to go, the black-white thing really goes well, so we're going to use that completely, right? 100%. And if you're on the right, you're going to go another black guy who's bad. If you're on the left, you're going to go another white guy who's a white supremacist. You're just going to say that no matter what. You don't care. Now, again, do I know? I want to be very clear. Do I know if Daniel is a white supremacist? I have no idea. Maybe he is. He could be a member of a neo-Nazi group. I have no idea. So why would I say that if I don't know? Now, if we find out he was, okay, he was. It's true, but we don't. And from what I've seen, there's no evidence that he was. So why would I assume that? Why and what would I assume that? This goes back to the point I've been bringing up. Every little thing is taken just for somebody's advantage. And sadly, the New York City sheep, and I mean sheep, because we accept being bullied, we accept being pushed around, we accept that if our leaders do well, we're winning, right? We accept that. When they tell us, go out into the subways, we go, yes, and we go out into the subways. Remember during COVID, the lockdowns happened at 7 o'clock, everybody would get outside and clap for the government workers who were still working. Do you remember that?
Yes.
I wanted to vomit. That is some next level Stockholm syndrome. That is like peak Stockholm syndrome. We're clapping for our jailers. Thank you for locking me in my place. Oh, that's what New York City people do. So if you're not New York City, it's hard for you to understand that. But that's my city. That's what we become. We talk trash all the time. New York tough. New York people. No, we're not. No.
That was a generation ago.
That's a generation ago. That does not exist. New York today is not that at all. New York today is a bunch of sheep who just, when AOC wins, we then go, see, we're winning. Why? Because a Hispanic woman won and beat a white guy. I'm not joking. That's what happened. And they were like, yeah, we're winning. How are we winning? Well, because an Hispanic person won the seat. Okay, great. Is your life better? No, my life still sucks. But how do we win then? Well, because representation. Our Lord and Master has done well, so we're doing well. This is house slave stuff.
To be fair to her, and as much as to be fair to her, as much as I disagree with much of what she says, as a representative in the House, there's not like one of hundreds of representatives for federal law. There's not a lot you're going to be able to do to immediately affect your local community in the same way that like a local, like I think your local politician or your governor has, or even your mayor can do a lot more to affect your life than a House representative. Because even if that House representative actually believes in 100% of what they say, their ability to get a federal law passed is going to be really, really slim without getting everybody else on board at the federal level. But I do agree with the crux of what you're saying.
I try to give her as much credit as I can, for there are certain things she's actually amazing at, right? She does have a work ethic, right? She has an impressive work ethic. She busted her ass for that seat. That's for sure, right? She knocked on my door. Like, she busted her rump for that seat. I give her the work ethic 100%. I totally will I'll give her credit where credit is due. And when she first started, she was all about fighting Nancy Pelosi. She had the dukes up. She's ready to go. I was like, okay, this is good. But now, again, you may or may not like this, but the point is, she promised people on the left that she would support unions. She did not. She promised people she support Medicare for all. She did not. Now, again, I'm not for Medicare for all. It doesn't matter. The people who supported her wanted that. She backed down on everything.
Yeah, I understand the whole, like, once you get in or once you have power, the whole I'm going to go along to get along thing. And I've made that mistake twice with the right to repair shit. I went over that in a video that I did where a lobbyist said, hey, you really shouldn't release this private email, but if you want to win. So I say, okay, fine, I want to win. I won't release it.
I remember that, brother, but you came clean.
Yes.
You came clean and you said, look, I screwed up, I won't do it again. I did the same thing. Last year, I was trying to get a hold of all the people to do the right thing so we can all get together and win this damn thing. Then they all stabbed me in the back. I did it too. I tried to play along to get what everybody so they could help me out. And what did they give me? They sued me off the ballot was their response.
Yes. Going along to get along doesn't work. Also, just to get to that one.
I came clean. She doesn't.
I agree, and yeah, I'll just say when I lived in New York City, AOC was not my she was not the person that I voted for. I'll leave it at that. One comment:
Absolutely.
what is the libertarian stance on right to repair? Seems like companies are making tech disposable on purpose, but corporations are people too.
Well, I'll tell you my stance on it in general. I have a good general stance. Stance number one: rent the equipment. Rent it. If you rent it, you still own it, right? I rent to you. I still own it. I keep the right to repair, but now it's my responsibility to repair it, right? It's rental. My responsibility to repair it. I pay for the repairs. You're renting the equipment. That's option one. Or two, you sell it. If you sell it, then the person who bought it can repair it. They have a right to repair it. So if you don't like the idea of allowing people to repair your stuff, then you must lease it or rent it so that you still own it and you have to repair it yourself. You're responsible for the repairs on it. I accept that as one form of business. The other form is you sell it. If you sell it, they can repair it. It's very simple. It's property rights. It's ownership. Who owns it is responsible for repairing it. That's how it should work.
When is your next campaign?
I'm already on campaign already. Oh my God, I'm already on campaign. Why am I on campaign? Because 2024, for those who don't know, it's a little bit off topic, but it does matter. If you want to make change in this country, you have to break the left-right evil versus good paradigm, which means you have to have an independent person running in some way, shape, or form. Whether you like libertarians, forward party, independent party, whatever is your thing, I'm open to all of them. We need an independent party. It's like two parents fighting in a marriage. You got to have a third person come in there and try to fix some things, right? It's not going to work. That's what's happening now. Someone's got to do it. What is stopping that from happening? Literally, it is getting on the ballot. You cannot, people say all the time, well, if you have better candidates, you physically cannot get on the ballot. They create laws to make sure you can't get on. The judges are on board with all of these things. I spent $400,000 last year trying to get on the ballot and lost. We went to court 8 times, 6 appeals, lost all of them. I wanted to go further to the Supreme Court. I couldn't. Why? I ran out of money. I couldn't go back again to my donors one more time and do it. Literally, this way they do it is a true story. You have to make copies, physical copies of everything. I had thousands of things to make copies of. I spent tens of thousands of dollars just on copies that they never looked at, never checked, could have done electronically, but nope, if you don't do a physical copy, they will not accept your appeal. So I had to spend tens of thousands of dollars on copying, and that's on purpose so that people can't appeal, so that people can't go further. I ran out of money. So you can't get on the ballot. People say all the time, if Trump loses the thing, the primary, he'll run independent. No, he won't. He won't because he can't get on the ballot. It's impossible. How do I know this? I tried. So my campaign right now is to get ballot access for an independent party in New York State in 2024. I'm working on that now because if I can get ballot access in 2024, we can have an independent candidate run for president in all 50 states in 2024, and I can run for governor in 2026 and get on the ballot. You cannot do both. You can only do one. You can't try to get on the ballot and run for office. I found out the hard way. You can't do that. So I'm doing it now. And if you care about that, and I hope you do, you can go to LarrySharpe.com right now and support me so we can get ballot access in New York State. Go there, give me some money. It does matter. I have to raise $500,000 by next year, April 1. April 1, need $500,000. I'm not there yet. I haven't broken the $100,000 mark yet. I'm on my way to it. Help me out. Throw me some money. Now, I know some of you are super rich and you want to like do the whole thing, give me all $500,000. I know you love me that much, but you can't. The maximum you give me is $9,000. So for that guy who's ready to give me $20,000, stop. $9,000 is all you can do. I'm joking, obviously. Whatever you can give, please give. $10, $20, all good. $100, all good. If you happen to have $9,000, please give that. That would help because I need that so that I can do both lawsuits, which there will be, and pay petitioners, which I will need, and pay for marketing to make sure that New York State gets 2% of the vote, so we'll have an actual ballot, be able to be on the line. And what does that mean? It means people will be able to vote for a third party, even if you don't like third parties. If you have a third party, there will be better other parties. Why? Someone will hold them accountable. You want better Democrats, better Republicans? Have a third party. You want better anything? Have a third party. Have a place for them to go. Anyway, my pitch is over. I think I did my commercial already for you. Thank you, Lou, for letting me give a commercial.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for taking the time to talk with me for an hour and a half. I really appreciate it. It's been a lot of fun.
No, of course. I will yap forever, brother. You and I can talk for years about this.
We should.
I know there's parts of New York City you do miss. I know there are. Come on, give me something.
I miss my bike, but that's only
There we
because
go. See, I knew there was
that's only
something. There we
because
go.
it broke when the movers put it on the truck. So I can't. I don't know how much of that is really New York versus me just being too lazy to fix it since I moved here.
Well,
Honestly,
I gotta tell you
there's some shit I miss. Like a lot of the restaurants that I used to go to, but a lot of them closed during COVID. I miss like a lot of the small businessy neighborhoods, but again, all
Yes.
those are gone. Like, you know, just the ability to walk through the East Village or and just see all these little small shops that did cool shit rather than a bunch of retail space for lease signs. There's a lot of stuff that I miss, but a lot of stuff that I miss is stuff that no longer just fundamentally doesn't exist. Like, I don't miss
think you're
going
right.
outside and feeling this sense of tension with neighbors that are like, I don't feel this weird. I don't miss the, like, I'll just give one example. So there was one.
Please.
Okay, so I remember going to the doctor and I get an alert on my phone that, like, I realized that one of my credit cards was missing. I had it in my back pocket and it fell out of my back pocket. And like, I go back to ask if it's there, and I'm getting alerts on my phone, like, you know, $100 spent at a vape shop, like $50 Jimmy John's, $200 at some shoe store, and it's like, I wasn't in a Subway. I was in a doctor's office. I was in an actual doctor's office getting a checkup, and it fell. I know exactly where it fell too. It fell in one of the chair that you recline in. It's like somebody, like, I don't have to be. And the thing is, I was not on high alert for that like one day. I was just relaxing.
Yes.
I miss. I'm not saying that you should be relaxed like that constantly everywhere you go, unless you're, you know, the middle of Walpole, New Hampshire, in a lake or something. But I don't know. I don't miss having to have that kind of sense of alertness all the time. It's just it's been nice to be able to decompress and.
Well, most people don't realize is that New York is 1/3 people who aren't born in the country, another 1/3 people who aren't born in New York City. So many of us aren't very connected. So we feel disconnected from our neighbors often. We feel like it's a big monster around us, and that, you know, well, it's probably some rich guy, whatever. They don't seem to care. It's a lot of that. By the way, somebody was asking if they can donate to me if they're not in New York. Yes, as long as you are legally in America, meaning you are either a citizen or a green card holder. Yes, you may donate as long as you are either of those two. If you are not a citizen or not a green card holder, you may not. So if you're not a citizen, but you're a green card holder, you may. So as long as you are legally in America, you may. That's correct, no matter where you are.
Well, thank you very much for taking the time. I really appreciate it. And
all right, brother.
I'll
Always
have
good.
Some links
Let's do it
down
again.
below where you could find them if you're interested. Although, you might just be better off going to Texas than staying in New York for the hope that Larry becomes governor. I'm not supposed to say that out loud. I love you too.
Maybe.
All right.
Maybe. We'll
See you at the next one. Bye-bye. Okay. Okay. Huh. Did I break this? I think I broke it. Uh-oh. I did break it, didn't I? Auto reset on timeout. Huh. I did. Oh, well. Well, I broke it right as the stream ended, so I guess if there was any time to break it, now's the fine time. Thank you, everybody, for showing up. Really fun. Yes, I was happy, excited to have. If you go back to my border pair videos in 2017 and 2018, you'll actually see "Consider Larry Sharpe" in the bottom of them. Not vote for Larry Sharpe, because I don't feel like I have the right to tell people who to vote for. I'm not Casey Neistat or any shit like that. I don't have the right to tell you who to vote for. That's not my place. I just said consider him, and I do think. Ah, there we go. You can see probably there's a cat that's licking my armpit over here. That's kind of weird. Don't pretend. Yeah, look at you pretend like you weren't just licking my armpit while the camera was out. You freaking weirdo. Yeah, so in all my videos in the bottom, it didn't say vote for Larry Sharpe. It just said consider Larry Sharpe, because he has a lot of good ideas and he doesn't really seem to care about rooting for a party versus what's actually going to work. And he seems to really try to solve each problem, not with ideology, but with a basic kind of common sense that seems to be lacking in modern politics, which is probably why he got 2% of the vote, because common sense is kind of lacking in general nowadays. Anyway, that's about it for today. And as always, hope you learned something. Clinton, you have anything to say? You have anything to say before we get some to eat? Little Clinty? Little Clinty? You're not even going to look at me, really? I pet you. I give you a platform of 1.7 million people. You're not even going to say a word. You're not even going to look at me, are you? Wow, what an ingrate. What an ungrateful kitty. Clinton, say hi. He literally looked at me and then squinted and then looked away. He's not in the mood. All right. He wants me to get out of the house. All right. See y'all later.